Okay guys, so a lot of people have requested to see longer videos from me. People that have seen my reels, caught up on my trips, mainly through Instagram, and they've said to me they want to see how I live, what I do for a job, how I fund my travels, what I eat. They want to know about my car, what inspired my trip. So here we go. I'm now signed up for YouTube. And you're looking at my subscribers are about 16,000, which I've gained within 5 weeks. And within a couple of years' time, I will have millions, because I'm an unusual person. I think that people are going to find this interesting. I've had my social media accounts on private for the last 15 years that I've been doing ridiculous road trips. But that's another topic. This video is about an introduction to me. My name is Charles Wright. I'm 40 years old. I'm a Libra. I was born in Buxton in Derbyshire, which is in the Peak District National Park in England. I lived here for 24 years. I was born rich in a 15-bedroom Victorian country mansion and went to school in a Rolls-Royce. The mafia began to steal the house, and after 5 evictions we finally lost it. But I lost my father too during the struggle. It was a war that went on through the legal system in the Royal Courts of Justice in London, the highest court in the land. It was due to a corrupt judge and a corrupt builder in partnership with one another. They built up a case in order to steal my father's country mansion and everything he owned. My father died when I was 13 years old, so I've raised myself since I was 13 because my mum ran away and moved to London. She couldn't take it anymore. It was a 20-year legal battle. And my father and mother, I grew up in court and hospital waiting rooms at the bedside, or in the Royal Courts of Justice in the waiting rooms. So basically, by the time I'd grown up, I was virtually a lawyer because I knew so much about law through listening to them. My mother made case law twice during the process, and she's Swedish. So I'm half English, I'm half Swedish. But I always lived in England until I was 24. Then we finally got evicted the 5th time. 5 evictions over my lifetime I went through, where we would get dates sometimes saying we have to leave the property, and sometimes we wouldn't be sure if they would come or not. Some would get cancelled. It just depended if my father could appeal it through a straight judge or get a sitting in front of a straight judge. If he couldn't get a sitting in front of a straight one to cancel the eviction, then we would get evicted. Anyway, so he died when I was 13. The 5th eviction came. We weren't sure if it was going to happen or not. And the 5th eviction was when I was 16, and they all turned up, about 20 police officers, the county sheriff, bailiffs, court officials, and so on. They smashed our front door into our home with hammers, drilled the locks out, and then dragged me out by my ankles across the broken glass. That was shortly after a roof protest which went in the national papers. We've also been featured in the Sunday Times. Now this is a bit of a heavy start, but what I'm trying to build up to is I'm trying to tell you all about what made me me as a person, because people say that I've got balls and that I'm strong and that I don't take any shit. And it's true. But you know, when you've had experiences like that and you grew up in such instability, that's what makes you so strong. So strong enough to drive across 33 African countries and live in the sand with the locals, camping alone in the wild, driving that distance alone in the car. I mean, people, a lot of the time I don't realize some of the things that I've done that people consider to be really crazy. And you know, there are people that do sometimes circumnavigate Africa, not many, but usually they you know, I've never seen somebody do it on their own, really. I mean, I have a couple of people, maybe cyclists or, you know, but, you know, for people to say to do it alone is really crazy, because people feel comfort in having someone with you. But I prefer to travel alone, because I only want to be responsible for myself in dangerous situations. And I know I'm a very capable person. I'm a brave person. So if a shit hits the fan, I want to be able to deal with it myself, whether that be fighting or just moving very quickly. You know, what I do is obviously dangerous. You know, the highest risk, believe it or not, which nobody considers, is obviously road traffic accident. You know, so it's a risky business. It's, you know, this is my passion. These are called ridiculous road trips. My friend owns the actual blog on Facebook. It's called Link from South Africa, and he is the guy that actually inspired me to make my social media accounts public. So shout out to Link. He spotted me when I was halfway through West Africa, and I was driving down with all my accounts and my Instagram, posting to it on private. So I never cared about getting followers, and I was always content, and I've been content for many years and very happy in my life for, you know, at least the last 15 years that I've been traveling, living my dreams. But he said to me, you know, even if you don't want the money and the following, do it for other people. You can build up a following and help other people with it. Now, that leads on to something else that I've always dreamed of, and that is that I've always said that I wanted to have the last half of my life helping people, maybe how to run a charity or do humanitarian aid. Which, you know, hopefully I'll be beginning next year. But I don't want to go too far off topic now, because I was hungry for about 7 years of my life, raising myself from 13 to 21, so longer, you know. My mum finally came back when I was 21 years old. And, you know, I forgive her, and she's always supported me with everything that I do. It's just that I couldn't explain to you, especially as many parents watching this, how somebody could ever leave their child. But that is mainly because you would never have been spending 20 years fighting a war in the Royal Courts of Justice, while your husband had 2 heart attacks, a stroke, and a brain tumour, which he finally died from. You know, that whole time my mum kept him at home. She wouldn't put him in a home. She kept him at home so he could keep his pride, and she looked after him. So I know the loyalty of my mother is, she's just one-off, total one-off, you know. So I forgive her for running away during the difficulties. So yeah, as I was growing up, when I got to like 7 years old, because we had 12 acres of land and a boating lake, and anyone watching this vlog may be from Derbyshire or knows me from my hometown or my home area. They know bits about this story, but not enough to ever get involved, or, you know, why should they really? It's past, it's history. So basically, when I was 7 years old, my dad bought me a motorbike, and he also bought me a golf car with a Harley Davidson engine in, which was like really rare. And I used to race them around our land, so I had total freedom and never had to worry about any documents or anything, you know. And he put so much trust in me as a child, so when I used to fall, I would fall on my own. I'd be laying a field with part of my shin chipped, which now is still part of a piece of the bone, my shin bone missing. I can feel it when I rub my leg, you know. And I was laying the field after falling, you know. The shin chip was from a BMX, but I've also fallen off a motocross bike in the field when the throttle cable stuck inside itself on full acceleration going up a steep hillside. And I've just laid there before and I thought I wished I was dead because the pain was so bad. So, and you know, as much as I hate to say it, I think these experiences are very important for us to have to bring us balance in life, to know what pain actually feels like. You know, I've never been religious, but most people cry out to God if they're in suffering. So I do believe there is a God, but you know, let's say if there's 1,000 religions at least in the world, you've got to choose one, which means the other 999 are not real, are they? So it's a bit of a struggle to choose one. I mean, but they generally mostly all go in the same direction anyway. So I do believe there's a God, but I've not decided on a specific religion, and I'm not sure if I ever will, but I need to show some gratitude for this wonderful life I've had at some point in some way or another, and maybe that will come through helping people in need. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, by the time then I was 8 or 9 years old, my dad bought me a little car. I think it was like an Austin Metro or something, and we put 2 or 3 cushions on the seat, and he came in the car and taught me to drive. And then eventually he'd let me drive it on my own, and obviously I've rolled a car, and you know, he just always warned me not to crash into the lake, but he really trusted me a lot, you know. He was a brave guy himself and very capable guy, self-made millionaire basically. You know, we lived in one of the largest houses in the area, and he came from nothing. He came from living in the slums of Gorton in Manchester I think it was on a council estate. And he made his money by just putting a car on his neighbour's garden on the corner of the junction and putting a for sale sign in the window. He sold one, and then he put 2 there and paid them a bit of rent, sell 2. And then eventually he got a car showroom selling cars, and then he started to rent 2 casinos, and then he was very successful with that. And I think it was by the time he was aged around 35 after leaving the RAF, he basically decided to retire and move from Manchester, from the city, a city boy, to move to the countryside here in Derbyshire. And that's when he bought Bennetston Hall. And basically it's a large Victorian country mansion. You can Google it. I can't be bothered cutting this up and putting pictures in and videos and all the fancy stuff like vloggers do. This has to be just straight talk, you know. Maybe eventually when I get better at editing or have the time for it, you know. I don't want to spend my whole life on my phone. So, you know, and that was the start of it all. And there was you know, my dad ran it as a hotel, and then there was a fire in the roof, a suspicious fire before I was born. And my dad always suspected it was through jealousy because there was no way of explaining it, and he was a very cautious and capable man. So that's what started a fire in the roof. So then, you know, my mum was pregnant with me, I think, so we had to move out and move into the coach house behind it. Anyone that knows us from this area will be familiar with our story probably, but will have never properly understood it. So, you know, he got his friend who was a builder to put the roof on, but, you know, his builder was part of a group of old gentlemen's club, which I won't name currently. My mum's currently writing a book if anyone would like the naming and the further details relating to my house, home and history. Then that should be released at some point in the next couple of years, hopefully. You know, the builder put the roof on wrong because he knew a High Court judge. And then my dad refused to pay. The government put a dangerous structures notice on it, so he couldn't open it as a hotel, and that started a court case, which then went in front of the builder's friend, who's a High Court judge. And the High Court judge slammed my hammer and said my dad still had to pay anyway, which is just pure corruption. So Anyway, not getting too involved in that. If you're interested in that side of the story, that's my mum and dad's side. You can buy a book one day. I'll post it on my Instagram or on my YouTube. I'll let you know when it's there. If anyone wants to know more about my travels all the way down through Africa, most of my stuff was posted to Instagram under CharlesWorldTravel. If you just started following me on YouTube here, you might not know about that, but I'm hoping to plan to post to both channels in the future as much as I can. And yeah, my car is, so yeah, let's get on with it. Basically, I used to go to school in a Rolls Royce, which when I was 4 or 5 years old, I crashed it into our fountain back at home, like you see on the cover from the Oasis album with the Rolls Royce in the swimming pool. It was mad. Like, seriously, my mum parked the car on the brow at the top of our driveway, and she said, I'm going in the house to get some stamps. I forgot to get the stamps for the post office, so I jumped forward onto the driver's seat, and then I was playing with the indicator levers because I like that, and it's column shift on a Rolls Royce. It was a Silver Shadow, so I actually knocked it into neutral, and then the car started to roll down the brow of the driveway. And then my dad was chasing the car because he'd been working in the yard just behind it. And then it just crashed into the fountain, thankfully, because if it hadn't gone into the fountain, it would have gone over the edge of, like, it's not a cliff, but a very steep grass slope. And it was a 2-ton car, so it would have hurt. But I mean, these are the things that life experiences that I've made that have taught me to be the practical person that I am. I'm a very practical and capable person, and also a lot of this time growing up at the house with all this stuff and doing all these things, I was alone. The nearest neighbours were like a couple of miles away, really. So, I spent a lot of my childhood alone, which now when I'm older, I mean, I love company. I love to be around good people. I'm a very social person. I'm always sleeping in hostels, sometimes with up to 30 people in one room. I've stayed at hostels in Portugal where I've shared the room with 12 people and lived there for 3 months. I'm an extremely outgoing, sociable person, but I do find that to just take responsibility for myself, and also it gives me more freedom. And also sometimes I'm too selfish to negotiate. If I've got someone in the car, I have to be fair to them and say, right, are we going left or are we going to go right? Maybe they want to go right and I want to go left, and then I have to sacrifice part of my trip for their wants, and they have to sacrifice theirs for mine. But I find the only way to experience pure freedom at the highest level is to be alone. Because if you're alone, you can see and do whatever you want. So that is the main reason why I travel alone. Obviously, it helps not to have the arguments, as we all do. That's totally normal. I have travelled with my ex before for 13 months, and it was very difficult for both of us. I'm not saying anyone was to blame, but I just prefer, it was just an incredible dream as well, that trip. But I'm just saying that I prefer to travel alone, and I would recommend it. If anyone's watching this video and you've never traveled before, do not be afraid of traveling alone. I left here when I was 24 years old and got on a one-way flight to Thailand. And I was worried. I was asking all my friends, will you come, will you come? And nobody will. Obviously, everyone's tied down in their jobs and bills and whatever they've got. And, as soon as you get on the plane, that's it, really. You meet people. You're just meeting people all the time. So you've got to ask yourself, is it more of an experience to travel with the same person and hear the same stories and tell each other the same things to somebody that you know every day? And meet maybe one other person a day, or 2 other people a day, or maybe another couple each day? Or are you going to have more of an experience to go alone, where you meet 30 people a day? You know, these conversations like this vlog I'm doing right now with you is basically based on conversations that I have in hostels drinking beer with 10 other people. And, you know, people seem to find them interesting, hopefully, you know. Like people follow me and ask to hear more about it and say it's interesting. So that's partly why I'm doing this now as well. So yeah, traveling alone is not something to be afraid of, you know. Maybe if you're a girl and you need that little extra support and comfort of having a man with you, I get that. It's not fair life, you know, for ladies. You know, we have so many concerns to deal with, and us men just get away with it scot-free, you know, when it comes to regards to like protection and so on. But don't let that put you off, whoever you are. Get out there and travel, because it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. It's not even travel to me anymore now. It's like we're breathing all the time air. We don't realize it. Well, that's what travel is to me. It's just like breathing. If people say, "You're going traveling?" I'd be like, what do you mean? I mean, it's just life. I'm always moving around. I'm actually homeless currently. And as bad as that may sound to most people, that is my dream. I'm an unusual person. I grew up in instability. So it's fine for me to travel in war-torn countries or to drive Africa and stuff, because I don't always need to know where the next money's coming from, or where the next destination is, or where the next hotel is, or if the car's going to break down, where am I going to get help? I don't care. I just get in the car, I turn the key, and it's the best feeling in the world. So, yeah, so basically I went to Asia and I traveled there 20 months. I said to my mum I'll just go for a couple of months, and she was like, go for a year, because she traveled when she was younger. So I ended up out there 20 months. And basically a lot of people ask me how I fund my travels, but that's how it started. I used to have an eBay business before I was leaving. And as I was about to leave, I thought, all right, well, I only had £2,000 on the bank account, you know, because it'd taken me so long to leave and I was so young, I blasted a lot of my money, which I shouldn't have done. And I was about to close my eBay account before I left, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to leave this open. So I just left my stock in my mum's living room, and I just said to my mum, if something sells, can I just send you a message on WhatsApp with an address and how many pieces to send? And she's like, yeah, sure. So she would just, these little headphones, Sony headphones in bags, I had like a few, or at the time, it was different products over the years. So I would send her a message each day and just say 1 bag of headphones to this address, and she'd be, and 2 to this and 3 to this. And she would just go to the post office for me and ship them out each day as they sold. And I would be somewhere in Asia on a bus, going through Laos on a bicycle or whatever. So that's what funded my travels, really. I used to make about £20 a day from it. But in Asia, that's a lot of money. Hostels at that time were like £2 or £3 a night, £2 a night. You know, and a meal was £1. My beers would make up half my budget. I'd spend about £5 a day or something. So, and I basically just left my eBay account open all the years that I've been traveling, the last 15 years. I mean, I've not been traveling consistently for 15 years. There have been some years where I've mainly been based in Cologne. Because while I was traveling in Asia, I met my ex-girlfriend who's from Cologne. And that's why a lot of you may have seen I'm based there now. When I say I'm based there, that's where my business still is. We've been broken up for 7 years now. And so Cologne became a big part of my life. So my first trip was 20 months in Asia, where I traveled 10 countries. I met her, moved back to Cologne, lived there with her for a few years, and then we broke up, and then I decided to stay living there because I'd learnt German and set up my own company and everything. And I didn't see the point coming back to England because I never appreciated the weather, the fighting and the drugs that I grew up around. The culture was just not for me here. You know, a lot of people are fleeing England now, and I see a lot of things in social media saying that it's, you know, it's one of the most unhappy countries in the world. I'm not sure if that's just some bullshit social media stuff, but I could definitely believe it, you know, the amount of drugs people do and fighting and hooligans and so on. But anyway, let's not slag the country off too much. It's an extremely beautiful country, and every country has its good sides and bad sides. So in Cologne, you know, I carried on running my business. After we broke up, I went traveling in Asia again for another 3 months. But while I was with her, we'd traveled together for 13 months through South America and North America. We motorcycled from Peru to New York on a 125cc Yamaha, which, you know, was unreal. We did it on a budget USA on $10 a day. I mean, there is a travel budget guide out there saying USA on $100 a day, but we did it on $10 a day each. So, but that's another story. I'll get into that another time. So, and then after that, it's like broke up, and then I stayed in Cologne. And then I had my little car, which I'd owned for 7 years. And this was about 3 years ago. And the TUV, which is the MOT testing centre, said to me, look, Charles, you've had this car 7 or 8 years, 7 years at the time. Toyota Yaris. I bought a Toyota because I know about cars. I used to be a mechanic. My dad had a Rolls Royce. He taught me mechanics. That's it. I don't want to work on it. You don't want to work on your car. If you want to just drive it, then it's Toyota. Yeah. So that's why I bought it. I used to use it as a shopping car around Cologne, just to go to the post office to take my parcels away for the business or to pick up stock. You know, I only used it like a couple of times each month, really. But the test was running out. The garage is saying, look, the car's only worth 600 euros. I paid €1,000 for it 7 years before. And the next test was coming up. So I went to Portugal to try and seal a deal on my electric skateboard business, which I had on the high street in Cologne at the time. And Portugal, the laws were more suitable for my business. So I went to Portugal. I made a deal with a guy to rent a shop. I said, I'll be back in a month or two. Went back to Germany, gave up my apartment, filled the car with electric skateboards and stock and things to set up a new shop in Portugal. Drove from Cologne to Portugal over 3 or 4 days, got to the shop, didn't agree on terms with the owner, and then ended up just selling the skateboards online out of the back of the car, basically, and met a girl there, was in a relationship there for a few months. Ended up staying in Portugal for about 6 months in total. But then the test on the car was running out, and the insurance, and I was ready to move on. So I thought, I'm not taking this car back to Germany. You know, the test to get it through its next one is going to cost more than the value of the car. I don't want to pay it, but at the same time, it's a great little car. I do not want to scrap it. So I have a very spontaneous mindset, and I'm a very adventurous person. So I thought, right, well, I'll drive it to Marrakesh in Morocco, where I'd been before on a holiday a few years prior. And nobody cares about the documents in Africa, so I'll just drive it down there and park it in the side of the main road and decide what I'm going to do with it. So I actually drove it through Portugal and then Spain, and I think the insurance had already pretty much ran out, and the test as well. Got down to Marrakesh, parked it in the side of the main road, left it there while I flew back to Germany for a month while I was considering what to do with it. Obviously at this time the car had virtually no value to me. I'd tried to sell it before for 700 euros and they just came kicking tyres and offering 600 or 500, and I just said no. And that's when I decided I'm going to do another ridiculous road trip like the one I did Peru to New York with a 125cc Yamaha. And, you know, by the way, I got no motorcycle license. So, you know, I'm a bit of a controversial person. There will be people watching these vlogs saying, oh, you should be perfect, you should take responsibility, you should do this. Well, I don't care. So if you don't like it, don't follow me, you know. It's who I am. Yeah, I'm an unusual person. My whole life I grew up with people pushing me out of groups, looking at me in strange ways, and trying to suss out the way that I think, well, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to really figure out what goes on in my head. And you know, I was ashamed of it growing up. I'd do anything to fit into groups, but it turns out now, in the end, being unusual is not so bad. I'm actually proud of it now. But getting bullied for it when I was growing up and being stood up, or people not meeting me, or behaving unusual with me, or just pushing me out, it was an awful thing to grow up and experience, especially with people talking about our old house and how we got evicted and how we lost it. And because it was a rare case of corruption, which doesn't often happen in England, local communities start to think, oh, it must be your dad. Yeah, I've never heard of something like that happening to somebody before, so maybe it's just your dad that was corrupt and not the High Court judge and his builder, you know. Anyway, I'm going off the point a little bit here and back into the history now. So the car is parked in Marrakesh and I was in Germany, so I thought, all right, I'd only seen 2 countries in Africa, like visited, and I thought, that's a continent that I've not really seen much of, and it's so raw and rugged, and I thought you could really get your teeth into some adventure down there. And I thought, well, it's a Toyota, so it's reliable enough. I'm going to fly back down, take a tent and some sleeping bags and stuff like that. So I did. I flew back to the car and I drove it through Morocco and started heading down the west coast, you know, of Africa. And I mean, this is unheard of because people would only use like 100 grand's worth of Hilux with 4x4 systems and roof tents and all the fancy gear. But I didn't have a lot of money. I never have had a lot of money, and I don't care about having a lot of money. Having a lot of money is such a burden. People don't even realize it. When people set up a business, I've always been like, I'm keeping this business small. But when people have businesses, they just can't help themselves but say, oh, now let's make it bigger. Let's set new targets next year. Let's double the size of a business. Let's double it, double it, double it, double it. Let's get a Mercedes. Let's buy a big truck. Let's have a fancy office. Let's get more staff. That's what I see everyone doing my whole life. But they do not realize that that is the reason why they have zero freedom. Yeah, I have loads of freedom. I've spent my whole life fitting into other people's schedules. You know, I work 20 minutes every 2 days online while I'm traveling just to print my shipping labels. They come out my friend's printer in Germany, and she just bangs them on a box and leaves them behind the house for the courier to come. You know, but don't, you know, I'm making it sound like it's easy. I'm not saying like people are stupid because it's easy. It's not. You know, I've been in business 25 years to learn how to do this. And I built my first battery when I was 13 years old. I'm 40 years old now. You know, that's how long it's taken me to learn how to repair batteries in my battery laboratory and find the suppliers that I've got, making call arounds, calling hundreds of companies or emailing hundreds of companies over the years. It's very hard, you know, and for years you have to go without any payment, you know. So very stressful. I probably lost 10 years off the end of my life because of all the stress, but you know, my biggest fear is dying in a nursing home anyway. If I'm going to die, I'd rather die doing what I love, and that's closely related to this trip and what I'm doing here. So if I've lost from 70 to 80 years old, sat in a nursing home on my own, that's fine with me. I'd rather live a fast life, a short life, than a long life, boring life, you know? So yeah, anyway, back to the point. I was heading down West Africa, and I've done it in chapters. So I drove down to Ivory Coast, and then to what's it called now? You know, just past Cameroon, and then it went from there down to South Africa, and then up to Zambia, and then from there up to near Kenya. You know, I mean, it might shock some people this, and I don't know, a lot of people are not very familiar with Africa, but it's looking like in March I might be driving into South Sudan. So, like I say, if anything happens to me, you know, if nothing happens to me in a few years, I'll have millions of followers doing what I love. I'm not doing this for the camera. I'm not doing it for the followers. But I do want to try and help people if I can along the way. So I'm not saying too much about it at the moment, about my plans. You know, things can change in the world. So maybe I have to change plans too. But that's where I'm up to so far. I'm hoping maybe Toyota will help sponsor my plans, and we'll see. But yeah, this was the introduction to my life. Today was the 5th of November 2025, and yeah, I hope you liked the introduction. I tried to keep it on topic as much as I can. But yeah, it's 36 minutes in now. I don't want to bore anyone, or, you know, so keep people for too long. Yeah, that'll be my first vlog. Thanks for watching, guys. Oh yeah, and if you want to support my trip, I'm now on Patreon. You can find the link in my bio. If you've enjoyed my trips and stuff like that, and you want to put something towards it a little bit, then you know, I'm going to keep bashing out these ridiculous road trips because I just love it. All right, guys, I'll be back soon.